Okay, great. So thank you, Pravesh. So welcome everyone once again. Welcome everyone on for today's webinar, which is hyper automation. We are going to talk about hyper automation and how hyper automation is transforming the business process management. So to begin with, let me walk you through what is automation and what has been the journey of automation so far. If we look at the software and the hardware in computing, okay, so once the post the advent of hardware came a revolution which was software, and subsequently there was a need for automation, automating various processes. The first type of automation really started with robotics desktop automation. Now, obviously, the industry was matured at this stage to manage the various uh, with the various applications, various processes with the use of hardware and software. But at this point of time, or at this stage of automation, most of the automation was human triggered, which fundamentally means that there is a process to be completed, and there is a software which is available with us. What we do as human beings, we trigger certain actions so that the computing devices and the computing softwares can take over and accomplish the task. Now, in this kind of an automation, the one of the issues, or rather one of the limitations, was that the context awareness was very, very minimal. So that was something which was supposed to be which was supposed to be taken up for further automation. um, then came the second layer of automation, which actually started from the year 2012, 2013, somewhere around that time, which is the robotics process automation. Now, robotics process automation really took about 5 to 6 years to really mature. And if you look back, it was the year 2017 and 2018, which is where robotics process automation started gaining some momentum and certain level of acceleration. Now, how is robotics process automation different from robotics desktop automation? As I said, that robotics desktop automation was completely human triggered actions to be taken by the computing devices or the computing softwares. Whereas in case of robotics process automation, this entire triggering of actions was orchestrated. So businesses in robotics process automation, or companies building robotics process automation, started building orchestrators which would take over the routine human tasks. So the routine human task is, for example, I come to office, I open my email, I go through my email, sort the emails, and then take certain actions on those emails. Now, all of these tasks, which are routine in nature, got taken over by the orchestrated process, which the robotics process automation actually delivered. Now, is that sufficient? Because here again, in the robotics process automation, while the tasks are being completed in totality or are being automated in totality, the contextual awareness or the context awareness is still very limited. So the challenge of overcoming the context or understanding the context, where machines are able to do a little more contextual understanding, which means, again, going back to the same email example, if the email has to be not only processed or segregated, and segregated for certain actions to be taken by human, if it is supposed to be answered in a smart and intelligent manner by the machine, then it obviously requires some contextual understanding by the machine. Okay. So that is what we call the fourth layer in this slide, which is called the narrow artificial intelligence. But just I will take a pause there and also talk about a layer, a very small little layer of automation called autonomics. Now, autonomics is one level above the robotics process automation in terms of enterprise applications, which is where instead of centralized computing, we talk of distributed computing. But here, the only change that I'm making is the computing environment, and not really building any level of intelligence for addressing the contextual awareness. The narrow artificial intelligence, or what we call intelligent process automation, or what we call hyper automation today, is what is all about addressing the challenge of bringing the ability of contextual awareness and thus taking certain actions into the machines with the use of cognitive computing, which is fundamentally machine learning, deep learning, and NLP. And one of the other technologies that is supporting this entire cognitive understanding is the computer vision technology. So that really makes our layer of, or the current discussion of how hyper automation can actually help the businesses, and businesses transform their processes with the use of bringing contextual understanding into the software robots. There is another layer which is a little bit in the future, okay, which is what we call general artificial intelligence. Now, if you look at this particular slide, what it talks about is a matrix where the evolution is tracked between human involvement and intelligence in the machines. So if you look at the robotics, desktop automation has the highest human involvement, and as we go further, the human involvement and the machine intelligence keeps on increasing. So machine intelligence keeps on growing. Human involvement in taking any actions will keep on diminishing. Um, General artificial intelligence is what we are talking about is self-operating software robots, which is where very minimal human intelligence or human involvement is required, and the machines do most of the tasks. But that's a little bit further in the future. So with that understanding, or with that background of the evolution of automation, uh, let me straight away get on to what is hyper automation and how is hyper automation shaping the industry. Now, Gartner, according to them, in another 3 years, that is 2024, most of the organizations will reduce their operational costs by, by almost about 30%. And this they will be able to achieve by combining the various automation technologies and redesign the operational processes. Now, hyper automation will play a very important and a very significant role in this entire transformation, or in this entire journey of organizations to be able to scale and to be able to save costs. Now, why do we automate? Now, these are just certain statistics by major research organizations. So, the intelligent automation market, which was $1.6 billion in 2019, in 2020 it was $3.4 billion, is expected to grow to $46 billion by 2030. So we are really talking about a very rapid growth of intelligent automation. Now, that also calls for individuals, which is human beings, to be able to manage this entire transition. And as per a report of McKinsey, almost about 375 million software individuals, or individuals working in the software industry, are expected to reskill themselves. Another study by PwC talks about that how AI and hyper automation is going to impact the industry. So almost about $15.7 trillion of global economy is going to be in some form or the other going to be touched upon by artificial intelligence. So that is the scale, or that is the need of the hour, which every business, if we want to be competitive in the market, every business will need to adopt automation. So let's also look at what are the common business challenges that we have in today's businesses. And this will resonate to probably most of the businesses and most of our business environments. Now, one of the big challenges that every business has to account for or has to manage is the business continuity. And there is no better example than the unfortunate last year, which where many businesses got impacted due to COVID. Managing business continuity became a very big challenge, and most businesses were actually grappling with how do they manage their continuity. In a routine environment, there are a lot of repetitive tasks that human beings do. Okay. So tasks like manual data entries, tasks like triggering certain actions with the use of, even if I'm using the most sophisticated CRM or ERP in my enterprise environment, I'm still doing a lot of these repetitive tasks. Then one of the challenges that most businesses have is that there are these legacy systems to deal with. uh, in a large enterprise environment, in a large business setup, obviously there are multiple processes, and there are a lot of these process interdependencies to deal with. So a typical example would be that if there are if there is Oracle Financials which is taking care of my financial applications, uh, the business CRM that I'm using is Salesforce, and if I have to integrate tasks or if I have to automate these tasks, there are a lot of these process interdependencies as well as the infrastructure interdependencies. One of the very important element in any business process is how do I make use of data which is in form of unstructured data, and documents is one such example of unstructured data. There are many other examples like patterns, the images, and so on and so forth, depending upon the business type. But what we have experienced and what we understand from various different research that have been done across businesses and across organizations is that unstructured data really forms almost about 80% of the organization data, which which a business today is unable to make full use of it, or full potential use of it, because unstructured data today has to be processed using certain softwares, but by and large has to be processed manually. Multiple data sources, that's another big area. So you have various different database, like how you have various different applications which lead to complex application architecture. You also have multiple data sources which lead to multiple dealing with multiple databases. Now, what all of these other business challenges really mean is that the human resources are unable to focus on high value tasks, because most of our workforce today is managing the low value task, like repetitive tasks, like processing tasks, and so on and so forth. And hence the human resources are unable to unable to focus on very high value tasks. Market challenge, the one big market challenge is the global growing customer expectation. So as the competition grows, the customer expectations also grow, and businesses find it very very challenging uh, unless they really transform their entire processes to be able to cater to the customer expectations of today. Now, what is the effect of all of this? Like, these are the challenges, but what is the effect? Effect is there can be sudden business disruption. Okay. As I said that humans are unable to focus on high value tasks, and hence it leads to slow innovation growth. Uh, Again, as I said that last year we have seen many businesses on a scaling path. Suddenly they find that because of some business discontinuity or disruption, the scalability is inconsistent, and it also happens in the business as usual stage, at a business as usual environment. um, Transformation is not rapid, so this also these challenges also lead to lack of very rapid transformation, and most CIOs then start grappling with the market demands versus the digital transformation journey that we all follow. Process compliance is another area, and of course we spoke about this, that as the competition grows, there is a constant need for our digital transformation, or our ability to support the business also keeps on growing. What is hyper automation? So this is where we start to understand what exactly is hyper automation, and how will hyper automation help us in achieving, overcoming the business challenges that we spoke about, and how are we going to accomplish with the use of hyper automation technology. Now, there are various definitions, and these are just definitions, but fundamentally, whether you call it, Gartner calls it hyper automation, or you call it digital process automation, or you call it intelligent process automation. So these are different terminologies adopted by different researchers, but fundamentally they mean the same. So let's understand what exactly is hyper automation. So in the first slide, we spoke about what is robotics process automation. Now, RPA with embedded artificial intelligence, which is where, so what we do is we use RPA as a platform. We embed artificial intelligence along to work alongside RPA to make smart robots, smart software robots. Now, artificial intelligence uses computer vision, machine learning, natural language processing, deep learning, and so on and so forth. And we add a layer of business process management. So this is typically what hyper automation is. So hyper automation would always mean that the implementation of automation will constitute a combination of all of these technologies, which is robotics process automation, AI, and business process management. Now, we spoke about these challenges, and just for our understanding in terms of how hyper automation really manages each of these areas, and what components of hyper automation can really work with what components of hyper automation can work together to address each of these business challenges. So business continuity management, we only need the BCM, and we need RPA, which is a repetitive task. So managing the business continuity would fundamentally mean that we are continuing with the business at a much faster transition, or much faster handover. Now let me give you an example of this, which is a disaster recovery. So in case of disaster recovery, the biggest challenge for any CIO is the switchover. If a human, if it's a human enabled switchover, then obviously it's a time consuming process, and there are various triggers that a human resource will need to induce to manage that business continuity. If it's a repetitive task, of course, it is intelligent repetitive task because it has to be triggered with certain set of information, but BCM takes care of that. So a combination of BCM and RPA can transform the business continuity and take it to a completely different level, completely new level. Repetitive tasks I've spoken about these repetitive tasks. There are many data entry tasks. There are many, tasks which need to be triggered as part of our business operation. So RPA with AI uh, can transform repetitive tasks in any business. Legacy systems, managing legacy systems need only RPA. And one of the beauty of RPA here is that because it works, it mimics the user interface, and it does not require human triggering. It can be very easily implemented across all types of legacy systems. So it does not really matter whether I'm using my legacy software is 1 year old, 2 year old, 5 year old. RPA mimics the desktop or mimics the UI and takes those actions, and very simple to implement. Process interdependencies, again, a combination of BPM and AI. Unstructured documents, where we said that, yes, in the legacy processes, these documents are usually read on one screen and data entered onto the other screen. Now, with the advent of computer vision, or with the use of computer vision, uh, machine learning, deep learning, and some level of natural language processing, where we are inducing the contextual understanding in the robot, in the software robot, along with RPA, can now very well read a document, process a document, classify a document, extract data out of the document, and push that data into system of records for consumption of various enterprise applications. Again, very similar to complex application architecture, the robotics process automation BCM can transform these processes or these challenges. Now, this is critical. Once we free up the routine tasks from the human being, the humans are now able to focus on innovation, are able to focus on high value tasks, which are typically decision making tasks, which are typically innovation led tasks, or which are typically transformation led tasks. And with the implementation of hyperautomation, we are now able to also deploy more human beings or more human resources into intelligent work, which is managing customer expectations. Let me take a use case for a better understanding of how hyperautomation can help us in the digital transformation. So this is a loan origination process, a very typical loan origination process. And I have, in this particular slide, I've kept it at a very high level, just for the simplicity of understanding. Now, these are the 7 stages of a loan origination process, right? From pre-qualification to loan disbursement. Now, what happens is that most of these tasks are in pre-qualification, which are application um, updation, and the retrieval of the application or the retrieval of document is done through some software application, which are in the loan origination industry. These softwares are called loan origination softwares or loan origination systems, what we call LOSs. Now, that's a business process management, because these are readily available softwares, need to be just triggered by certain human actions. Now, application processes, once I have retrieved the data from an application, there are there is a significant amount of human workforce which is involved in entering this data, which is in the application, into various different LOS softwares or various different modules of LOS. One is loan origination, second is underwriting, then there is a loan appraisal module, then there is a loan servicing module which goes beyond the loan origination process, and so on and so forth. So these are repetitive tasks, and then there are these multiple actors, and then there are multiple consumers of this data, and it has to be entered into, based on what data is required to be consumed by which application. There are multiple um, there are multiple entries that happen, and everything is manual. Credit check is partially automated process because most of the credit check is either being done through certain standardized processes or certain standardized checks and like a credit check report and so on and so forth. So it is kind of partially automated and is currently being managed through a business process management. Then we have the loan appraisal. Now, loan appraisal and underwriting are very complex processes. It involves humongous amount of documentation, and it involves large amount of human interference, or rather human actions. Um, so typically, you go through a loan appraisal process, and the loan underwriting process is driven by multiples of human resources deployed only to carry out these tasks. And these are the defining tasks, right? These are the defining steps in the loan process, because they define whether the loan is approved or loan is not approved, whether the loan has to be disbursed or what amount of loan has to be disbursed, and so on and so forth. And there are multiple checks that happen at this stage. Going forward, there are two simple steps which are currently being managed through business process management software, which is again part of the LOS, which is the loan account creation and the loan disbursement. So this is the current process or a legacy process, how a loan automation is managed, or a loan origination is managed. Now, if we move this entire process with the use of hyper automation, which means what we are talking about is deployment of RPA and deployment of smart bots, which is intelligent bots, um, which is fundamentally a combination of RPA plus artificial intelligence, and how we can transform the entire loan origination process into into a much more efficient and a far better loan origination system. So a pre-qualification work which was done by loan origination software, which is again human triggered, now can be completely automated with the application of bots. So while the consumer is filling the application and uploading the data, the smart chatbot will read each and every entry and walk the customer through these entries, and in real time make suggestions, make corrections, and in case if there is any document which is missing or a wrong document has been uploaded by the customer, that entire process can be managed by a smart chatbot. Application processing requires some level of, as I said in my previous discussion, application processing is fundamentally reading multiple documents with the use of computer vision. Now the humans don't need to work on two screens, one to read, one to write. So the smart bots take over this entire application process and read the data from the documents and write the data into system of records, or in whatever application uh, format that is required for processing the entire application. Credit check, which is again which is again today a human triggered task, with the use of various softwares, can be completely transformed by moving to RPA. Now this is interesting. Now what we are doing with the loan appraisal and underwriting process. Now in the loan appraisal and underwriting process, what we do is that, suppose there are 100 applications coming for processing in a day, and there are 100 such agents who are doing the loan appraisal and managing the loan underwriting. What happens with implementation of hyper automation, what we do is that, based on the efficiency of the robot, so let's say the efficiency of the robot or the confidence level of the robot is 95%, then only 5% are going through exception handling by human in the loop, which is done with the use of a validator, or which is done with the use of some level of data extraction, correction, and training the robot. But the balance 95% in this case is now really going in the straight through processing. So imagine the amount of resources and time that is saved uh, by automating just these two processes. So because they are critical, we do not want to take any chances. We still want, even if there is 1%, 2% accuracy issue, we want to keep a human in the loop. But the human here does not need to really, kind of validate or take actions on 100% of the data. What they do is they take action only on the 2%, 3%, 5% of the information. And we continue with the account creation, that is again can be enabled through RPA, and loan disbursement can also be enabled through RPA. Now, we have worked with many loan origination businesses and very many loan origination software companies, as well as we have worked with quite a few lenders. What we have experienced is that with the implementation of RPA and IPA, the efficiency of the entire loan origination process ranges between, and depending upon the stage of implementation that they are in, ranges between 5x to 10x. But it can very well, scale up your operations to that level. So this is just one of the examples which I thought, we can use as an example to understand the impact of hyper automation in our today's business processes. Now, this is a busy slide. I don't want you to, focus on the elements of this slide, but this is just a representation of what a legacy uh, loan origination process in detail looks like, with various actors and various steps. And when with the implementation of hyper automation, if you look at it on the right hand side of the slide, the boxes which are marked in red, those are the processes and sub processes which are now taken over by the smart bots, or a combination of smart bots with the business process management softwares. And if you look at the landscape, it's almost about 80% of the processes are now being done with the use of hyper automation. So this is just a representation, a slightly deeper representation of what we saw in the previous slide. Now, to walk you through what are the various functions and how can, we used an example of loan origination software just to understand, what is the impact of hyper automation. But hyper automation can impact many functions, and rather almost all functions in any business. And uh, it works very seamlessly. As I said, it works very seamlessly with your existing enterprise infrastructure and the existing enterprise application. The role of hyper automation or the intelligent process automation is only to accelerate the the kind of work or the kind of productivity that the current enterprise applications or enterprise softwares enable us to achieve. Now, in the next few slides, what we'll do is we'll take a few examples of how hyper automation, or what all can be potential use of hyper automation. So if we talk of a finance function, typically a reporting or collection management or vendor onboarding, which also involves certain data, certain documents to be automatically read or submitted by the vendor, uh, certain approval processes, then purchase order and sales order processing, ledger posting, which is done by an army of human resources, including some of the critical tasks or certain critical actions like secure fund transfers, etc., can be automated and in a very, very highly secure manner with the use of hyper automation or with the implementation of hyper automation. Also, in legal and compliance, where documents are slightly more complex in nature. So, for example, contract. Now, contract requires hyper automation and not just pure simple contract understanding requires hyper automation and not just pure and plain and simple RPA or the legacy desktop automation. Because here we need some level of artificial intelligence to understand the contextual aspects of a contract. So, to give you an example, if I have to read certain elements of a preamble of a contract, or if I have to enter in my system of records the termination clauses in a contract, that can be very easily achieved by hyper automation, where hyper automation computer vision will read the document, understand the context, place classify the various clauses, and place in the right places. Some of the other applications of in the compliance and legal could be customer due diligence, new registrations, various banks and various banks and financial institutions need periodic disclosures or need risk management or need to detect fraud. So those are the kind of applications that can be can be achieved, or those are the kind of uses that can be achieved with the implementation of hyper automation. Similarly, in human resources, right from employee onboarding, verification, to your attendance management, to payrolling, to training scheduling, and to even rolling out employee benefits, tax management, etc., which are routine tasks in nature and also deal with certain level of documentation or understanding of document, can be very easily automated with the implementation of hyper automation. So we can accomplish all of these tasks with much greater level of efficiency. In sales and marketing, I did talk about this example where, if I'm using Oracle as my tool for invoice generation or the financial management, I also use Salesforce for my as my CRM. So working across platforms, working across enterprise applications with the implementation of RPA and IPA, all of these processes like invoice creation, CRM updation, again, purchase order management, we spoke about that in the finance application, lead management. Lead management would also include lead allocation based on some smart distribution, general reporting, some level of social media monitoring, campaign management. All of these functions will have and will have a use case for hyper automation. Customer support. Now, we spoke about this as a one big challenge in the current business challenges in the previous slides. And if we have to really be competitive in today's world, then customer onboarding is one area where every business will need to look at automation. So right from your customer retention to verification to onboarding, CRM updation, ticket allocation and generation of these tickets and allocating of service tickets to various agencies and so on and so forth can be completely automated. Similarly, in supply chain management, right from your contract management, we spoke about this example while we were talking of compliance and legal, inventory management, demand supply estimation. I mean, we spend hours and hours of human resources only to assess the demand supply estimation, to work on the data, but that can be very effectively managed by the smart bots. Supplier onboarding, order processing, work order management could be some other examples of automation in supply chain management. Now, while we have had a look at some of these examples, let me take the next few minutes to introduce what is Collotech Intelligent Process Automation Solution Platform and how does it function and how does it help your business in implementation of hyper automation. So Collotech's IPA, we call it Intelligent Process Automation or Hyperautomation, is fundamentally a very rapid development and deployment approach, uses a very rapid development and deployment approach. Um, we build low-code softwares to be adaptable to any enterprise software architecture. One of the areas that we focus on is we pre-train the bots, and we use a very unique methodology to train the bots. Now, I will spend maybe a few seconds to explain what do we mean by this unique methodology. So, like how we have to train a newborn child, we have to similar in a very similar approach, we have to train the bot, because we don't want the bot to be implemented and start functioning or start doing completely different set of activities that we don't want the bot to do, right? So our training approach is a twofold training approach. Our training approach trains the bot on the real data sets, and within that framework, we also train the bot on synthetic data sets, and synthetic data sets emulate real data and not real data, right? So once I have trained the bot on real as well as synthetic, which is the not real uh, data, then my bot is able to manage the actions that a human being was supposed to take, right, in a far more effective manner. So I have to train him what's wrong, and I also have to train him what's right, for the bot to be able to do the or take over the right process. So that is the unique methodology that we use for training each and every bot. And of course, we build end-to-end process orchestration to help your workflow go as seamless as possible. Now, a typical architecture of Collotech's hyper automation solution is irrespective of the input channels, which can be various input channels. Input channels can be customers, input channels can be various internal teams, or input channel can be a back office, which is typically processing the business data. And business data comes in structured data and semi-structured or unstructured data. So some of the examples of semi or unstructured data would be email data, chat data, voice notes, certain documents, or any kind of documents, images, and social feeds. So at the heart of our hyper automation solution is the intelligent process orchestrator. Now, the orchestrator has three components. One is the backend RPA engine and a front end AI engine, which is what makes the entire RPA platform smart, or rather enables the RPA to be able to conduct the smart tasks which a human being was doing, and a combination of or a synchronization with the business process management softwares. So that is the heart of our hyper automation solution architecture, what we call the intelligent process orchestration. And in the consumption layer, once the data, which is coming in form of structured or unstructured or semi-structured data formats, once this data is processed with the Collotech intelligent process orchestration, is now ready for consumption by various enterprise applications or various modules like reporting, or just pushing the data, the structured data, into system of records, sending out alerts to customers, or pushing the data into various supply chain management tools or ticketing tools, CRM, ERP, various different social media feeds, which are typically unstructured feeds in nature. Hyperautomation services landscape, which is what the Collotech hyperautomation platform delivers, is object detection. So various applications in object detection, image processing, NLP, I spoke about data simulation and synthetic data. So we do generate data simulations, which is an important element of our own consumption for bot training, as well as for the customers that we work with. On the connectivity side, these applications, the data will get connected to various edge computing environments or various edge computing devices, which input into various IoT applications, data visualization, business analytics, um, various enterprise applications. And then there is an array of microservices. Um, I spoke about certain sectors and segments. Then there are these microservices which which can be used by various functions within an enterprise environment. So that is all in today's discussion on hyperautomation, how hyperautomation can impact your enterprise business, and how hyperautomation can transform your business processes and take them to the next level. So now we will switch to questions. Um, any questions that anybody has? So I think Mega has certain questions. Have you received any questions on the chat window?
Not yet.
Okay, so if there are any questions, then we can, unmute and we can discuss here. So Pravesh, would you want to administer the questions?
So it looks like we have a few questions.
Okay.
So yeah, so the first question is, are you able to generate synthetic data in PDF format?
Okay, so yes, we are able to generate synthetic data in PDF format. We can generate synthetic data in PDF, in TIFF, or any kind of image format, which is what we call synthetic document generation. So the answer is yes.
Okay. Okay, so just a reminder, you can type your questions into the chat box so Amit can answer if you have any.
Or we can even unmute and because it's a smaller group, we can even unmute and okay, so it seems that, yeah, so it seems that there are no questions. Yeah.
Yes, Amit, thank you very much. And I think this has been a very insightful presentation, and I believe the audience must have benefited greatly from this. And if you guys do not have any questions at the moment, we will have the recorded session available. In case any of you would need it, you can just contact me. I will share the video with you guys. And afterwards, if you have any queries, you can contact me via email or even call me for those who know me, and I will get the questions to Amit, and I'm pretty sure he will be glad to answer and get back to you guys. So thank you very much again for your time and patience. And is there anything you would like to add, Amit?
No, so thanks, Pravesh. Thank you so much for organizing this webinar. Uh, I hope it was a good piece of information or good set of information to the participants today, and we will be pleased to hear more from you in terms of understanding how we can support um, the business challenges that any one of you in your existing business are facing, and how Collotech's hyper automation solutions can help. So thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, Megha. And good evening to everyone. And we hope to see you again for our next webinar. Have a good night. See you. Bye.
Thank you.